The whispers turned to silence. The mockery dissolved into shock. As Justice William Harrison rose from his seat, the room that had been filled with condescending laughter just moments before now held nothing but the heavy weight of collective shame. "My name is William Harrison," he said quietly, "Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. If you've ever felt judged for circumstances others couldn't possibly understand, this story might just give you the courage to stand tall. Like this video if you've ever been underestimated, and subscribe to join our community of storytellers who believe in the power of looking beyond appearances. The rain fell in sheets across Washington, D.C., the kind of unrelenting downpour that seemed determined to wash away the very foundations of the city. William Harrison pulled his worn jacket tighter around his shoulders as he hurried down the slick sidewalk, one hand clutching a leaking umbrella, the other firmly holding the small hand of his daughter, Olivia. "Daddy, my shoes are all wet," Olivia complained, her 7-year-old voice barely audible above the drumming of rain on pavement. "I know, sweetheart. We're almost there," William replied, his voice gentle despite the exhaustion that weighed on every word. The invitation to the parent-teacher conference had come at the worst possible time, right in the middle of a crucial Supreme Court deliberation that had kept him working late into the night for weeks. But William had promised himself when his wife died 3 years ago that Olivia would always come first, no matter what. The elementary school loomed ahead, its windows glowing with warm light that seemed to mock the darkness of the storm. William checked his watch, they were 15 minutes late. Another black mark against him in the eyes of Ms. Harrington, Olivia's teacher, who had made it clear in previous interactions that she found William's parenting lacking. As they entered the building, William felt the familiar weight of judgment settle on his shoulders. His suit, once impeccable, was now worn at the elbows and slightly too large for his frame. He'd lost weight in the years since becoming a widower. His shoes, though polished, were scuffed at the toes. To anyone looking, he appeared to be exactly what Ms. Harrington had labeled him, a struggling single father barely keeping it together. "Remember, Livy, head up high," he whispered to his daughter as they approached the classroom. It was their little mantra, something his wife used to say. Olivia nodded solemnly, her dark curls bouncing, so like her mother's that it sometimes took William's breath away. The classroom was filled with parents in expensive clothes, their hair perfectly styled, their postures radiating confidence and success. William recognized several prominent D.C. figures, a senator, the owner of a major tech company, a well-known lobbyist. This was, after all, one of the most prestigious private schools in the district, a place where connections were made early and futures were secured before children could even spell nepotism. William had chosen the school not for its prestige but for its excellent academic program. He wanted Olivia to have every opportunity, even if it meant stretching his finances and enduring the sideways glances of parents who assumed he didn't belong. "Ah, Mr. Harrison. So glad you could join us," Ms. Harrington's voice cut through the polite chatter, silencing the room. "We were just discussing the upcoming charity gala. Perhaps you'd like to take a seat? There's one in the back." William nodded, guiding Olivia toward the indicated chair while ignoring the curious stares. He was used to flying under the radar. In fact, he preferred it. Few people connected the disheveled single father with the reclusive Supreme Court justice who rarely gave interviews or attended public functions. His appointment 3 years ago had been controversial. He was younger than most justices, with a background in public defense rather than corporate law. The death of his wife shortly after his confirmation had pushed him further into privacy, focusing on his work and his daughter rather than the D.C. social scene. "As I was saying," Ms. Harrington continued, "the annual charity gala is our biggest fundraiser of the year. We expect all families to contribute significantly, both in terms of donations and participation." William felt a familiar tightness in his chest. The school's expectations for parental contributions were essentially mandatory, and while his salary as a justice was comfortable, the medical bills from his wife's illness had left him with significant debt. He'd been selling off their possessions gradually, downsizing their life to ensure Olivia's education remained secure. "We'll need volunteers for the planning committee," Ms. Harrington continued, her gaze sweeping the room before deliberately skipping over William. People who can leverage their connections to secure high-profile donations and attendance. A woman in a designer suit raised her hand. I've already spoken with my husband about hosting the pre-gala cocktail hour at our home. Senator Mitchell has confirmed his attendance. Murmurs of approval rippled through the room. William remained silent, making notes about the dates and requirements. Olivia leaned against him, clearly bored by the adult conversation. Excellent, Mrs. Mitchell. That's exactly the kind of initiative we need. Ms. Harrington beamed. Now, regarding the silent auction items, we're looking for truly exceptional donations. Last year's vacation home offerings were quite successful. William felt rather than saw the glances in his direction. He had nothing to offer, no vacation homes, no private jet experiences, no celebrity connections willing to donate signed memorabilia. His most valuable possession was probably his collection of first-edition law books, hardly the kind of thing that would excite wealthy bidders. The meeting continued in this vein for another 30 minutes, with various parents offering increasingly impressive contributions while William sank further into his chair. Olivia had fallen asleep against his arm, her face peaceful despite the tension radiating from her father. Finally, Ms. Harrington transitioned to discussing the children's academic progress. Before we conclude, I wanted to address some concerns about the third-grade reading project. Several students are falling behind, and we need parental support to ensure they catch up. Her gaze landed directly on William. Mr. Harrison, Olivia seems to be struggling with her reading assignments. Perhaps if you could find more time to work with her at home? The implication was clear, William wasn't doing enough. The fact that Olivia was actually reading 2 grade levels above her age was apparently irrelevant. She was quiet in class, sometimes withdrawn, and Ms. Harrington had decided this was due to neglect rather than the grief of losing her mother. I read with Olivia every night, William said quietly, his voice steady despite the anger building in his chest. Well, clearly it's not enough, Ms. Harrington replied with a thin smile. Children need consistency and structure, especially those from challenging home situations. A few parents exchanged glances, some uncomfortable, others nodding in agreement. William felt his face grow hot, but years of maintaining judicial composure kept his expression neutral. I understand, he said simply, gently waking Olivia as the meeting concluded. As parents began to gather their things, William helped Olivia into her raincoat, trying to ignore the conversations happening around him. It's so sad, he overheard Mrs. Mitchell saying to another mother. The child clearly needs more stability. I heard he can barely afford the tuition. I wonder why he doesn't just send her to public school, another voice chimed in. It would be more appropriate for their situation. Single fathers just don't understand what children need, a third voice added. Especially little girls. William zipped up Olivia's coat with hands that trembled slightly from suppressed emotion. He'd faced down the most intimidating attorneys in the country, deliberated on cases that would shape the nation for generations, and yet these casual, cruel judgments cut deeper than any legal argument ever could. Daddy? Olivia looked up at him, her eyes, so like her mother's, wide with concern. Are you okay? William forced a smile. I'm fine, Livy. Just thinking. As they turned to leave, Ms. Harrington approached, her smile not reaching her eyes. Mr. Harrison, a moment please. I wanted to discuss the tuition assistance program with you. Given your circumstances, you might qualify for our scholarship fund. The room, which had been filled with the buzz of departing parents, suddenly grew quieter. William could feel the attention shifting toward them, the curiosity and pity in the gazes that landed on his back. Something inside him snapped. Not in a dramatic way, William Harrison had never been a dramatic man, but in the quiet, definitive way of someone who has finally reached their limit. Ms. Harrington, he said, his voice taking on the measured tone he used in the courtroom, I appreciate your concern, but I don't require financial assistance. There's no shame in needing help, she replied, her tone suggesting the opposite. Many families in your position. And what position would that be, exactly? William interrupted, straightening to his full height. The room had gone completely silent now, all pretense of not listening abandoned. Ms. Harrington blinked, taken aback by the sudden shift in his demeanor. Well, as a single parent with limited resources. I find it interesting, William continued, his voice calm but carrying the authority that had made him renowned in legal circles, that you've made so many assumptions about my resources and my ability to parent my daughter. He turned to face the room, still holding Olivia's hand. The parents who had been whispering about him moments before now stared openly, some with embarrassment, others with defiance. For the record, William said, Olivia reads at a 5th grade level. She struggles in class not because of neglect but because she's still processing the loss of her mother. Something I mentioned in our first meeting, which you seem to have forgotten. Ms. Harrington's face flushed. Mr. Harrison, I don't think this is appropriate. As for my limited resources, William continued as if she hadn't spoken, while I don't own a vacation home or have a private jet, I am perfectly capable of covering my daughter's education. He paused, considering his next words carefully. He had always kept his professional life separate from Olivia's school, wanting her to be treated like any other child rather than the daughter of a Supreme Court justice. But the whispers, the judgment, the constant undermining of his parenting, it had gone on long enough. My name is William Harrison, he said quietly, Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. The silence that followed was absolute. Ms. Harrington's mouth opened and closed without sound. In the back of the room, someone dropped a coffee cup, the crash almost deafening in the stillness. I choose to live simply because those are the values I want to instill in my daughter, William continued. I don't attend your social functions because I spend my evenings either working on cases that affect millions of Americans or reading with my daughter. Not because I can't afford a babysitter, but because I promised her mother I would be present for every moment I could. He looked around the room, meeting the shocked gazes of parents who had dismissed him, judged him, pitted him without ever knowing him. I don't leverage my position for social advantage. I don't name-drop at cocktail parties. And I certainly don't measure a person's worth by the size of their donation to a school fundraiser. Olivia squeezed his hand, looking up at him with a mixture of confusion and pride. William squeezed back, drawing strength from her presence. Olivia will not be returning to this school, he said finally. Not because I can't afford it, but because I want her to grow up in an environment that values character over connections, compassion over competition, and actual education over social climbing. With that, he nodded politely to the stunned room and turned to leave, Olivia's hand still firmly in his. Daddy, Olivia whispered as they walked down the hallway, are you really not bringing me back here? William knelt down to her level, brushing a curl from her face. Would that make you sad, Livy? She thought for a moment, then shook her head. I don't think the other kids like me very much. And Ms. Harrington always seems mad at you. Then we'll find you a new school, William promised. One where you can make real friends and have teachers who understand what you need. As they stepped outside, William realized the rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking apart, revealing patches of star-filled sky. It felt symbolic somehow, this clearing after the storm. Are you really a Supreme Court justice? Olivia asked as they walked toward the car. Like in the big building with the columns? William smiled. Yes, I am. I'm sorry I didn't explain it better before. Is that why you have all those boring books and stay up late reading papers? He laughed, the sound surprising him with its lightness. That's exactly why. Cool, Olivia said simply. Then, after a moment, can I tell my new friends at my new school? If you want to, William replied. But remember, it's not who people are that matters, it's how they treat others. The next morning, William woke to the sound of his phone ringing incessantly. His assistant, normally unflappable, sounded panicked. Sir, you're all over the news. Someone at the school posted about what happened last night. It's gone viral. William groaned, reaching for his glasses. How bad is it? Actually, his assistant said, sounding surprised, it's overwhelmingly positive. People are calling you the People's Justice. There's a hashtag and everything. Over the following days, William's inbox filled with thousands of messages from single parents, from people who had been judged for their appearances or circumstances, from citizens who found hope in the idea that someone in his position understood what it meant to struggle and persevere. The Chief Justice called him personally. You've humanized the court more in one night than our entire public relations team has managed in a decade, she said, a rare note of approval in her voice. Though next time, perhaps give us a heads up before you break the internet. 3 weeks later, Olivia started at a new school, a progressive institution with a diverse student body and a focus on emotional intelligence alongside academic achievement. William attended the first parent meeting in his usual worn jacket, but this time he introduced himself fully from the start. I'm William Harrison, Olivia's dad and a Supreme Court Justice. But the dad part comes first. The parents welcomed him without fanfare, more interested in his ideas for the school's community outreach program than his title or position. For the first time since his wife's death, William felt like he had found a place where both he and Olivia could belong. 6 months later, William sat in his chambers, reviewing a complex case involving educational equity. His phone buzzed with a text from Olivia's new teacher. Olivia shared her story about her mom in class today. So brave. She's doing great. William smiled, running his finger over the worn photograph on his desk, his wife, Eleanor, laughing in the sunlight, her arms around a toddler Olivia. She gets that from you, he whispered to the image. That evening, as they sat together on their small apartment balcony, Olivia reading aloud from her favorite book while William listened, he reflected on how appearances and reality so rarely aligned. To the world, he was Justice Harrison, one of the 9 most powerful legal minds in the country. To the parents at Olivia's old school, he had been a struggling single father, barely worthy of notice. But here, in this moment, he was simply a dad, helping his daughter sound out difficult words, watching her grow stronger and more confident each day. And that, he decided, was the most important title he would ever hold. As the years passed, William watched Olivia blossom into a confident, compassionate young woman. By the time she reached high school, the story of her father's revelation had faded from public memory, but its impact on their lives remained profound. Olivia excelled academically but never flaunted her connection to the Supreme Court. Instead, she developed a passion for social justice, volunteering at legal aid clinics and eventually deciding to follow in her father's footsteps by pursuing law. William continued his work on the court, earning a reputation for thoughtful opinions that often bridged ideological divides. His colleagues noted that he brought a unique perspective to their deliberations, one informed by his experiences as a single parent navigating a world that often judged too quickly based on appearances. On Olivia's 18th birthday, William gave her a special gift, a journal her mother had kept during her pregnancy and the first year of Olivia's life. Your mother wanted you to have this when you were old enough, he explained as Olivia carefully opened the leather-bound book. She knew she might not be here to see you grow up, but she wanted you to know how much she loved you. Olivia traced her fingers over her mother's handwriting, tears welling in her eyes. Do you think she'd be proud of us, Dad? William wrapped an arm around his daughter's shoulders. I know she would. She always said that true strength isn't about power or position, it's about staying true to yourself even when the world tries to make you something you're not. When Olivia graduated from law school 6 years later, William sat in the audience, his heart swelling with pride. The young woman who stood at the podium delivering the valedictorian.